Chapter 1 of Book 1 of Physics. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jeffrey Edwards. Physics by Aristotle. Translated by Thomas Taylor. Chapter 1. Since about all methods of which there are principles, or causes, or elements, it happens that we obtain knowledge and science from the knowledge of these. For we then think that we know anything when we know the first causes and the first principles of it, and as far as to the elements from which it is composed. This being the case, it is evident that we should first endeavor to define those things which pertain to the principles of the science concerning nature. But the natural path in which we should proceed is from things more known and manifest to us, to things which are more manifest and known to nature. For that which is known to us is not the same with that which is simply known. Hence, it is necessary to proceed, after this manner, from things more obscure to nature, but which are more manifest to us, to things more manifest and known to nature. To us, however, things which are more confused are at first evident and clear, but afterwards, from these, to those who divide them, the elements and principles become known. On this account, it is necessary to proceed from universals to particulars, for the whole is more known according to sense, and that which is universal is a certain whole, since it comprehends many things as parts. Names also are, after a certain manner, thus affected with respect to definition, for they signify a certain whole, and this indefinitely, as for instance a circle, but definition divides it into its several parts. Children also at first call all men fathers and all women mothers, but afterwards they distinguish each of these. Chapter 2. But it is necessary that there should either be one principle or more than one, and if one, that it should either be immovable, as Parmenides and Melissus say, or moved, as the natural philosophers assert, some of whom say that the first principle is air, and others water. But if there are more principles than one, it is necessary that they should be either finite or infinite, and if finite and more than one, that they should be either 2, or 3, or 4, or some other number. But if infinite, it is requisite that either they should be, as Democritus asserts, one in genus, but different in figure or species, or also contraries. In a similar manner, likewise, they inquire who investigate the number of beings. For they inquire in the first place whether the things from which beings consist are one or many, and if many, whether they are finite or infinite, so that they inquire, with respect to principle and element, whether they are one or many. To consider therefore whether being is one and immovable does not belong to the speculation concerning nature. For just as a geometrician can no longer discourse with him who subverts the principles of geometry, but this is either the province of another science, or of that which is common to all the sciences, so neither can he who speculates concerning physical principles discourse with him who denies those principles. For there is no longer a principle if there is only one thing, and if it is thus one. For principle is either the principle of a certain thing, or of a certain number of things. To consider therefore, in this manner, whether there is one principle, resembles a discourse against any thesis whatever, which is advanced for the sake of argument, such as against the Heraclitean thesis, or if anyone should say that being is one man. It also resembles the solution of the litigious argument which the assertions both of Melissos and Parmenides contain, for they assume that which is false and are unsyllogistic, but the argument of Melissos is more troublesome and is not the subject of doubt. One absurdity, however, being admitted, other things happen as the consequence, but this is attended with no difficulty. We indeed suppose that with respect to things which have a natural subsistence, either all or some of them are moved, and this is manifest from induction. At the same time, however, it is not proper to solve all the arguments, but those only in which some one, demonstrating from principles, concludes falsely, for such as do not thus conclude are not to be solved. Thus, for instance, with respect to the quadrature of lunulas, that which is effected through segments, it is the business of a geometrician to solve, but it is not the province of a geometrician to solve that of Antiphon. However, though Parmenides and Melissos do not discourse concerning nature, yet, as it happens that their assertions are attended with physical doubts, it will perhaps be well to speak a little concerning these, for the consideration of these is philosophic. Chapter 3. Since, however, being is multifariously predicated, we shall begin in a manner the best adapted of all others to the subject, if we consider what those mean who assert that all things are one, whether they conceive that all things are essence, or quantities, or qualities, and again, whether all things are one essence, as for instance, one man, or one horse, or one soul, or whether they are one quality, and this, such as a thing white, or hot, or anything else of this kind. For all these very much differ from each other, and cannot be made the subject of discourse. For if all things are substance or essence, quantity and quality, whether these are separated from each other or not, beings will be many. But if all things are quality or quantity, whether essence has a subsistence or not, an absurdity will ensue, if it be necessary to call that absurd which is impossible. For none of the rest is separate except essence, since all of them are predicated of essence as their subject. But Melissos says that being is infinite. Being, therefore, is a certain quantity, for the infinite subsists in quantity. But it is not possible that essence, or quality, or a participated property should be infinite, except according to accident, viz., from certain quantities subsisting together. For the definition of the infinite employs quantity, but not essence or quality. If, therefore, there are essence and quantity, being will be two things and not one. But if being be essence alone, it will not be infinite, nor possess any magnitude, for it will be a certain quantity. Besides, since the one itself is predicated multifariously, just as being is, let us consider after what manner they say that the universe is one. But that is called one which is either continuous or indivisible, or when the definition unfolding, the essence is one and the same, as in methu and oinos, wine. If, therefore, being is continuous, it is many, for the continuous is divisible to infinity. There is a doubt, however, with respect to part and whole, though perhaps it does not belong to this discussion, but is to be considered by itself, whether part and whole are one, or more than one. likewise, how they are one, or more than one, and if they are more than one, after what manner they are so. The same consideration also pertains to parts, which are not continuous. And if each is one with the whole, as being indivisible, whether in this case they are the same with each other. If, however, being is one as indivisible, nothing will be a quantity or a quality, neither will being be infinite, as Melissos says it is, nor finite, as it is said to be by Parmenides. For bound is indivisible, not that which is bounded. But if all beings are one in definition, in the same manner as a garment and a robe, it happens that they will make the assertion of Heraclitus, for there will be the same essence of good and evil, and of that which is not good and good, so that what is not good and good will be the same. Man likewise will be the same with horse, and the consideration will not be whether all things are one, but whether they are nothing. The quality also and the quantity of a thing will be the same. Posterior philosophers also, as well as the ancient, were disturbed, lest it should happen to them that the same thing should at the same time be one and many. Hence, some of them took away the word is, as was the case with Lycophron, but others reformed the language and did not say that a man is white, but that he grows white, or that a man is walking, but that he walks, lest by adding the word is, they should make the one to be many, as if the one, or being, were to be predicated in one way only. Beings, however, are many, either by definition, as for instance, the essence of that which is white is different from the essence of a musician, and yet both are in the same subject, whence also the one is many, or by division, as whole and parts. Here, however, they doubt and acknowledge the one to be many, as if it were not possible for the same thing to be one and many. But yet they do not on that account admit the subsistence of opposites, for the one is both in capacity and energy. To those, therefore, who employ these arguments, it appears to be impossible that beings should be one. Chapter 4. It is likewise not difficult to solve the arguments from which they demonstrate, for both Melissos and Parmenides syllogize litigiously, since they assume that which is false, and their arguments are not conclusive. The argument of Melissos, however, is more troublesome and does not contain a doubt. But one absurdity being admitted, the rest happens as the consequence of this, a circumstance which it is not at all difficult to suppose. That Melissos, therefore, paralogizes is evident, for he fancies it should be assumed that if everything which is generated has a beginning, that which is not generated has not a beginning. In the next place, this also is absurd, to fancy that there is a beginning of everything, and not of time only, and that there is a beginning of generation, not only of that which is simple, but also of change according to quality, as if there were no mutation produced collectively and at once. Besides, why is being immovable if it be one? For, as a part being one, as for instance, this water is moved in the same place, why is not this also the case with the universe? And, in the next place, why will there not be change according to quality? To which we may add that neither is it possible to be one in species except according to the material cause, for according to this mode, some of the natural philosophers say that being is one, but not according to the other mode, for man is different in species from horse, and contraries from each other. Against Parmenides also there is the same mode of reasoning, though there are certain arguments which are peculiar to him, partly because he assumes that which is false, and partly because his arguments are not conclusive. He assumes that which is false so far as he considers being to be simply predicated, when at the same time it is predicated multifariously, and his arguments are inconclusive because if things which are white were alone assumed, since that which is white signifies one thing, there would nevertheless be many white things, and not one alone, for that which is white will not be one alone, either by continuity or definition, since the essence of whiteness will be different from that of its recipient, and it will not follow that nothing will have a separate subsistence besides whiteness, for there is no difference so far as it is separate, but the essence of whiteness and of that in which it subsists are different. This, however, Parmenides had not yet seen. It is necessary, therefore, that those who assert that being is one should not only assume that being signifies one, of which it is predicated, but also that it truly is, and truly is one. For accident is predicated of a certain subject, so that if being is one accident, that to which being is an accident will not have any subsistence, since it is different from being. Hence there will be something which is not being. It is requisite, therefore, that Parmenides should assume that which is properly and essentially being, for accident will not have the essence of being unless being signifies many things, so that each may be some particular thing. But it is supposed that being signifies one thing. If, therefore, that which is properly being is not an accident to anything, but something else is an accident to it, why should that which is properly and essentially being signify being rather than non-being? For if that which is properly being is the same as that which is white, but the essence of white is not properly and essentially being, for it is not possible that anything can be an accident to it. If this be the case, since there is no being except that which is truly and properly being, that which is white will not be being. It will not, however, be non-being, as if it were some particular non-entity, but it will be entirely non-being. Hence, that which is properly and essentially being is non-being, for the assertion is true that it is white, but this signifies non-being, so that if that which is white signifies being properly and essentially so called, being will signify many things. Hence, neither will being have any magnitude, since it is truly and essentially being, for the being of each of the parts of magnitude is different. But that being, properly so called, may be divided into something else which is properly and essentially being is evident to reason. Thus, for instance, if man is something which is properly being, it is necessary that animal also and biped should each of them be essentially being. For if they are not truly beings, they will be accidents. They will either therefore be accidents to man, or to some other subject. This, however, is impossible, for that is, and is said to be an accident which may or may not be inherent, or in the definition of which that is inherent to which it is an accident. Thus, for instance, to sit is an accident, as that which may be separated, but in a flat nose, the definition of nose is inherent, to which we say flatness is an accident. Farther still, with respect to such things as are inherent in a definitive sentence, or from which a thing consists, in the definition of these, the definition of the whole is not inherent. For instance, in biped, the definition of man is not inherent, nor in that which is white is the definition of a white man contained. If, therefore, these things subsist after this manner, and biped also is an accident to man, it is necessary that it should be separate, so that it may happen that man may not be a biped, or, in the definition of biped, the definition of man will be inherent. This, however, is impossible, for the former is inherent in the definition of the latter. But if biped and animal are accidents to any other subject than man, and neither of them is a certain being, properly and essentially so called, man also will be in the number of things accidental to something different from themselves. Let, however, that which is properly and essentially being be that which is not an accident to anything, and of which both and each of the essential parts, and that which consists from these, are predicated. The universe, therefore, consists from indivisibles. Some, however, have assented to both the assertions, to the one because all things are one, if being signifies one, since there is also non-being, but to the other by making from bisection indivisible magnitudes. But it is evident that it is not true if being signifies one, and it is not possible for contradiction to be simultaneous, that there will be no such thing as non-being. For nothing hinders but that non-being, though it has not simply a subsistence, yet may be a certain non-being. The assertion, therefore, that all things will be one, if there is not anything else besides being itself, is absurd. For who can understand being itself to be anything else than that which is properly and essentially some particular being? But if this be the case, nothing prevents the subsistence of a multitude of beings in the manner we have mentioned. That it is impossible, therefore, for being to be thus one is manifest. End of Chapter 4 of Book 1. Recording in memory of Mitchell Edwards.